Hello, this is Demon and yes, we are back here with another episode for Crime Story. So without any further ado, let's hop straight into the review. In this episode with the recap of the previous episode, something that Crime Story did tend to do a lot throughout, I'll say, it's the show's early years, early episodes, that would tend to recap. Eventually, at some point down the line, however, they did eventually do, this week on Crime Story with it, like snip clips of so on and so forth. But for me, this is more like if if you're watching it for the first time, it gives you a special recap to what happened in previous episodes, so you could be, up to date, as it were, with the the story so far. Again, this series was more episodic, was not so much episodic, but had overarching storyline. So I don't really kind of blame it for that, but I understand it's part of that kind of storytelling. Anyway, with that out of the way, we then get into the main story of the episode, where we go to a woman's like beauty salon, hairdressers type thing. The women are there. Another song from the era is playing. I'm not entirely sure what the song is personally, but so but that's the setup. And just as that's happening, some wacko comes in, basically offers Rocker, and then even though it's, we don't see it because we are with a woman, in the back of the hairdressers, and it's implied, and basically a shooting happens, and, it's implying, how they are killed, and, the woman's gone into hiding while the wacko goes into the back looking. It's a really brutal way, if you think about it, to start off an episode like this, because it's really horrible and all that. And I'm not sure if all crime shows were like that during this era, when the shows came out. But for me, it really did kind of really, show that this might be one of the more disturbing episodes we might be seeing throughout the episode. Anyway, just as we, see this whole thing play out, after we just saw that play out, we get to the opening. And I really like the opening credits, with the song Runaway, well, re-recorded and still sung by Del Shannon. I don't think I mentioned that that's the guy who sings this redone version. Del Shannon, who ironically also did the original version back in the early 60s. Anyway, but as soon as we leave with that, as soon as we're done with the opening credits, we then go to Mike Torello's apartment, where he and the guys, along with some of their girlfriends and of course Torello's wife, are basically just having a nice party. They're chillaxing, they're having a good time. And here we are introduced to another character of his, an old buddy of his, who's a working man, businessman type. And his character's name is Ted Keyhole. And basically he's offering Mike a job, like with him in the private sector, but Mike doesn't. He appreciates the offer and is obviously flattered, but for him, he's a cop through and through, and for him, he can't imagine doing anything like that. There's a bit of a back and forth with him obviously trying to get, Mike on his side, to do this, and Mike is constantly declining no. You can see that he's slightly getting irritated, but not to the point where he becomes angry with him. Again, he understands that, no, this is, after all, they are good friends. They've been together, for a long time, and I guess, like, you can't really ruin a good friendship over, a mate just trying to, give you, like, better opportunities and all that. But the party is ruined when, of course, Mike Torello's sergeant comes in and basically informs the group of a horrible shooting that has happened at the hairdressers that, of course, we saw earlier in the video. They all come here and they are horrified at everything. Even the chief, even Mike Torello's chief is there, and they're just horrified at what that they seeing this just occur. Like, how could an animal do this? And they go to a person who was at the crime scene, hinting that one of the with one of the ladies that was unfortunately slain, was basically very close to him. I'm pretty sure it was either either his girlfriend or his wife, and you can't help but feel sorry for the guy. However, it should be noted there was a survivor, but she's currently in the hospital. But just before we could get into that, we then come back to Ray Luca. This happened quite a lot with Mike Torello's story and Ray Luca's story. Ray Luca two of Ray Lucas' guy, Frank Holman and Paulie Taglia, are at a hideout and are basically getting ready for a score to come down. Um, Frank has recruited a buddy of his from the joint to participate in a another action deal, robbery. Paulie says we might need a fourth guy. Why don't you? But Ray's no longer interested in the scores. He's interested in more moving higher up in the ranks, and that's really his main motivation. We go then back to the squad room where they are still working on the current case. Tracking down, trying to get an identity of the guy because it's basically said in dialogue. The woman woke up and gave them a description, and they go all over Chicago, classic cop fashion. Talking up the local residents to see if they recognize the face. And that really played quite. And for me, this feels like so classic cop. This is what you would expect. And it really fits in because them doing like police work, more the grunt stuff, for me feels very a character with these guys because they're more traditional cops. For me, the 60s and 50s, where you get these more traditional detectives, with the fedoras and the trench coats. For me, they exist. For me, the period I associate with them is really from the 30s all the way into the mid 60s. Anyway, uh, eventually one day eventually after scouring the city, they go to a local bar where basically they're given a location courtesy of their last stop at a bar where they go to where they believe this employment or his supposed employment, but it's also an alarm revealed that his mother is in a TV, showing that this is a guy clearly off his rocker. Again, they go to the place, search files, and eventually figure out where he is. Well, not figure out where he is, but get more of a lead, more clues. We then see Mike Torello with the survivor of the hairdresser massacre, as I will tend to refer to it as, goes and shows photos, identity, you name it. But she has a breakdown, and you can't really blame her. She witnessed a horrible incident that I'm sure would have traumatized anyone. In fact, if I was in her position, I think I would be traumatized too, seeing what has just transpired. Anyway, Mike Torello, of course, has a talk with his sergeant. And again, they just get. And basically, they finally get a name for the name of the guy is Pernell Randall. But just as that happening, we go to Ray Lucas' story where Paulie, Frank Herman, and the accomplice are pulling off another robbery. Jewelry store robbery, and it's going well, but it's clear the accomplice is a little bit off, and however, this is not going to be playing off until the next episode, which I can't wait to reveal to you then. But basically, it's kind of pulling off a bit of a setup. Anyway, but also should be noted that just because Mike Torello's working on this case doesn't mean he hasn't forgotten about Ray Luca. So he has the sergeant kind of help him out. The sergeant goes to a hotel in town to meet, I presume, his girlfriend, or at least a lady admirer. But while he's there, he noticed Ray Luca enter the hotel. He then goes to the hotel, I guess, receptioner, because it's not a woman, receptioner, I'm pretty sure that's what you call them. Or reception, or the person at the reception, I think will be a better term. And basically, gets info from him about what room he's in, and of course he informs Mike Torello about the whole situation. Just as over the phone, just as Torello is getting set to find their perp. Just as that's happening, he gets the call and he realizes he can't pass this up. So the chief kind of slightly takes over while Torello and his sergeant go to the hotel and basically bug the room, listen in, classic, undercover cop stuff, listening to the conversation. Ray Luca is in a hotel room at this point with a well-known mob connector figure connected to Manny Weisborg by the name of Max Goldman. Now, I'm pretty sure this guy is slightly based off Lefty Rosenthal, the character that the real-life Anthony Spilotro, aka Tony Spilotro, aka Tony the Ant, really worked with. And basically Ray Luca is putting in his plan to possibly rise up more further and further in the crime world with a bookmaking operation, a large one that will net him a whole ton of money. Max first doesn't want to go along with it, as he says he's not going to go along with it unless Manny Weisborn will. However, Ray is very confident that this will work, and he believes that Manny will more than go along with it because basically Manny's basically become not so much more of a sponsor of his sponsor than Phil Bartoli. By the way, for those who aren't informed of mob lingo, sponsor means someone who backs you, who, you're under their protection, their clout, as it were. Anyway, the conversation is going until the man at the reception that I mentioned earlier slips a note under their door. Ray then tells Max just to be quiet, politely, goes to read the letter and informs that the room is being bugged and they are being monitored. He then gets out his gun, and here's a really tense scene because he's trying to make his way very covertly into the next one, and Torello and his partner know that something's up. And it's a really tense scene. The music really makes it work, and you really have the feeling that Ray is willing to gun him down, Torello down without a thought, and you can clearly tell Mike Torello really wants that because he wants to have a legit reason to gun him down and have it be justified. However, the whole thing is then just stopped as Ray and Max pretty much escape. Mike Torello then realizes something. Ray is no longer a street punk. In fact, he's moving further and further up into the crime world organization. Anyway, we go back to the streets of Chicago, where the rest of Mike Torello's team is basically tracked down where the crazy guy, Pernell Randall, is hiding, might be hiding out. They check there, but they're kind of too late as they tipped off their hand, and the guy manages to get out of the situation and basically scot-free, basically leaving them back at square one. We then head to an underground mob casino in the back of some truck where Phil Bartoli does one of his more lucrative businesses. Ray Luca then comes and basically tells him about an upcoming score that they plan to pull off, and he plans to do it while the cops are still looking for this crazed nut job. The perfect opportunity. They'll be too focused on them, they can get away with this crime more under the radar. But little do they know things are about to go down bad. You can also tell that Phil Bartoli, though, sees potential in him rising. He kind of just talk down to them. Little does he know, he's kind of sowing the seeds for the eventual tension and soon to be falling out later down the line between these two characters. Anyway, Mike Torello then goes to pick up his wife, I should say, and they go to have a fun time. It's clear they've just had a clinic where obviously Julie is trying to clearly get pregnant. Now, I'm conflicted about the storyline, not because of the subject in general. Obviously it's, people want to have kids and understand, for some people, it's got to be hard for them to have kids. I get that. But it's more so, did institutions like this really exist in the 60s? If they did, please write down in the comments, because I would really like to know. So that's why I kind of have a problem, because I don't know if it's 100% real, if this actually happened during this time period, or if it was something that has always been the case. Who knows? Maybe it might have been long before the 60s when stuff like this started to happen. But anyway, we go to an apartment where the crazed killer, Randall, is there, and we can see how he's getting further and further off his radar, more indulged into TV. We find out that he's so deranged, he thinks what's happening in TV is real. And for me, this actually is kind of fun. TV was very new during the 50s and definitely into the early 60s, which the series takes place in. So for me, that he's deranged and believes that, this is real. Eventually he sees a woman walk by, and this is where we get, I think, the darkest moment of the episode, where, he grabs a woman just randomly walking by, looks out his window, straps her up to some a TV antenna, and basically electrifies her for the whole city to see. Obviously, you can tell it's a dummy, but the fact that they're willing to go to do a scene like this in this time period, when the time period in which the show was made, not the time period in which the show takes place in, is really there. is really, unsettling to say the least. Anyway, we further go on in the episode with Ray Luca and his meeting with Frank Holman and Paulie Taglia for yet another score, another job. And it's another big one that, they know will pay dividends. Ray Luca is obviously stepping more and more back from being more involved in the street level stuff and leaving it to more like Paulie and Frank to take care of it. And basically, obviously, he's going to get a cut, gives it to Bartoli, you name it. He's more in the planning stages now and is less involved in the street stuff. Again, taking what obviously Manny Weisborn said to heart. But then go back to the police squad, where they are once again informed, or where they're informed of the woman's death, and they're finding a little bit more about realizing this guy's psychosis, that this guy's more deranged, but they still haven't figured out his psychosis stance. We then get to this scene. It's a very brief one where we've seen this mad guy throughout this whole episode, him running out with the music that's basically in his theme, and he's running around, going all crazy, showing how he slowly distances himself from reality. I find that this guy could work actually as a comic book villain for a more superhero that's more on the street level, so I kind of find him interesting. Anyway, we then go back to their popular bar, the Orbit, where most of the squad tends to hang out. This will become a popular place that they hang throughout most of the episodes that were in Chicago. As I said, later on they'll go to Las Vegas, but again, that's further down the line this season. Anyway, as soon as they're doing that, as they're in there, a song plays. Chubby Checker's The Twist. I've loved this song, obviously, because of its early 60s nostalgia, but for me, it's just fun. During the time at the bar, they're slowly trying to figure out more of this killer's psychosis, his derangement, and eventually Mike puts it together about, the antennas, him being, believing, fictional, reality and TV, all that. Once he's figured that out, we then cut to a scene where our killer has hijacked a local news station. And, he's taking everyone hostage with the cameras and all that. It's a really gripping scene because you know that this guy is just off his rocker. No way you can negotiate with this guy. But Mike Torello eventually makes his way there, obviously because it's been broadcast all over town. He and his squad then make their way in and obviously try to talk him down, trying to mess with his head, try to settle him. The whole usual what cops would do with a killer or someone holding a hostage, especially in his deranged state. However, shots go off. The TV kind of goes blank. Julie's clearly watching this, and what's happened, as we later find out, he offed himself. It's a really anticlimactic way for him to go out, all honestly, but you're happy that a deranged killer like this guy is off the street. Obviously, Julie is, has made her way to the station and is happy that Torello is alive, obviously, because she didn't know what happened. They have a drive home, they talk, the whole usual thing. But I kind of see the soon downfall of this marriage already, because I don't think she ever fully got or understood how really dangerous Mike Torello's job is. And I'm sure that, anyone who's married to a law enforcement officer, regardless of whether it's police, FBI, you name it, obviously this is going to be very tough on any relationship. But Mike Torello, also shows his compassion for the loved ones of the victims. So he goes to this guy and basically goes to give him a cheer up and tell him that, life's not over. And, as hard as it is, you have to take it one day at a time and slowly move on with your life. So I really like as it shows his compassion to the character. The episode then ends with Frank and his accomplice about to pull off the robbery that they were planning that I mentioned, the second robbery they were planning in the episode. I like, it's a be continued. Obviously, I believe the next episode it's hinting that's going to be more on the Ray Lucas side. So I can't wait to see where we go from here. Okay, now the squad this time with Torello and the rest, how they are very much affected by the killings of the hairdressers really gets to them, especially Torello. And again, we see how he shows compassion for the family members of the victims, is always great. And I like how, when he needs like someone to go out with him, his personal partner is his sergeant. For me, he just shows the close bondness. I think out of everyone in the crew, I think he's more close to his sergeant than he is to the rest of his crew, I'm sure. Surprisingly, however, Abrams is completely absent this episode, but I'm pretty sure he's going to come back later on as I've seen the series. He's going to have more of a major role, but the fact that he was pretty much absent for this episode, is sad, but honestly, there was no way you could fit him in this episode, so really great. Seeing Ray Lucas' ambition to rise up further, and the fact he's showing more of his brilliance, and he's slowly trying to get control of his temper, but you can still see the street side of Ray is still in him. The kid from the patch. The fact he was willing to get his gun out and shoot, Mike Torello when he sensed someone was spying on him, but only to stop. I guess because he's, ambition, he doesn't want to jeopardize it. Paulie, again, he's fun. Everyone loves Paulie. But we see, how Paulie's a street thug, and he doesn't really get the big picture, the big ideas. So, and you could kind of almost see that he's thinking maybe Ray's forgetting a bit of his roots, but I think it's more just Ray just, wants to rise up further, and, he has these big plans, and he's trying to plan everything out. Like I said, Phil Bartoli, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, as much as he's clearly one of Ray Lucas' sponsors, he kind of talks down to him. And, again, like I said, sowing the dissension. Frank Herman, we see how he's really, trusts this new accomplice that he brought into the crew, seeing how he has large and major potential. And I can't wait to see where that story is going to play out in the next episode. And again, like I said, we were introduced to Max Goldman. He's played by Andrew Dice Clay, a well-known comedian and stage actor. Comedian and actor. I don't know why I said stage actor. And what I'm interesting about his character is he's clearly set up to be, a new player or a new person to be part of Ray Lucas' inner circle type. And the fact that Ray Lucas has big plans and he feels that Max Goldman can help him out, shows that obviously he must have the influence and resources to help. Julie's character kind of plays a bit of a back seat, but we still get more into her character. The idea of her wanting to have children, and again, her maybe coming to the realization just how dangerous Mike Torello's job is. Again, these might be cliches now, but honestly, if you think about it, I'm pretty sure this must be groundbreaking for the time. So, yeah, I actually like it for the most part. The villain for this episode is Pearl Randall. I tried to find the actor who plays him. I don't know. If you happen to guys know, please write down the comment. But basically, this guy is a complete whack job, with his comprehension that he doesn't understand that TV and reality, over shifting. He's a colorful character, and again, I mentioned he's honestly something I expect to see as a comic book villain, but that's also kind of a problem. For me, I just feel that he's the type of villain that I should say criminal, doesn't quite really gel with this series, and I'll probably get more into that in my overall episode summary, but basically, I'll be honest, it's no fault of the actor, nor with the character. I just feel that maybe he might not be entirely right for this series, despite there's a lot of things I like about him in general, because he has antenna wires all over him, the way he dresses. I just feel he might be just out of touch, and maybe not quite a right fit for the show. Final Transmission for me is definitely an I think you might say experimental episode. And shows what the show would do. Mike Torello's story with Ray Lucas' stories, and at some point it would intertwine. But I'll be honest, comparing it to the Magnificent two-part pilot, it just feels bland to me, or doesn't live up. It sets up some stuff that will probably pay off in later episodes, and the main case is really something I'm not that really intrigued with. Again, nothing with the main villain or protagonist of the episode. Antagonist of the episode. But for me, this always just felt like a mixed bag, and compared to the pilot, I feel it's a downgrade. Who knows? But but despite that, it's still a decent episode. You can watch it. It is still fun, but I think compared to the pilot, this one is just doesn't really quite work for me. And there we have it. That was Final Transmission. Join us next time in the next episode on Crime Story. But until then, this has been the Stephen Hour. So long for now.